Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. Hope you are well. My girlfriend and I got given via a friend some free tickets to go to the State Fair Festival in Chelmsford just for the Saturday. It was on across the whole weekend, but we had day tickets. I have never really been to Essex much. However, my girlfriend used to live in Chelmsford, so she knows the area quite well. So we thought we'd take advantage and go along for the day. It was not a festival I had heard of, so I did a bit of digging, and it looks like it might have been the first time it had taken place in England. It was certainly the first time that it had happened in Chelmsford. We set off there just after midday, having pre-booked parking online, which all seemed pretty simple. We must have timed our arrival pretty perfectly because we got to Chelmsford with no traffic issues, and we were straight in to the car park and then directed to where they wanted us to park. I have had some bad experiences with large car parks. I once managed to lose the car I had in one of the hypermarkets in Calais, and it took me ages to find it. And when I went to Glastonbury on a day ticket, when I was working at a radio station down in Somerset, I managed to lose my car for about 3 hours. Couldn't find it anywhere because on both of these occasions I took no notice whatsoever of where I had actually parked. This time we made sure we knew exactly which zone the car was parked in, which is now something I now do after my previous bad experiences with finding cars in large car parks. We were not totally sure what to expect. We'd done some online research, so we knew more or less what acts were on, and we had a good idea of the sort of food and entertainment available there. The title, as it suggests, State Fair, meant it was an American-style festival featuring heavily on meat and barbecuing. So the whole field, the whole venue had a smoky, great barbecue smell to it, which was nice, but did mean you felt hungry more or less the entire time you were there. One thing that was really good on their website, from my point of view, they did have a filter where you could filter celiac-friendly places to eat. So I knew I could eat safely there with those stalls having completely gluten-free food on them. That was a really nice feature and not something I've seen on any other festival websites. Once we got through the gate to the festival, the first thing we did was have a good walk round, work out where we wanted to base ourselves and just get a feel for our surroundings. There were two main stages, a big outdoor stage and a smaller stage inside a big top. As I'll explain later, both of these stages had some very decent acts performing on them. After we'd had a good look round, we decided we needed some food. So, as it was a meat-heavy festival, I managed to find a stand that were doing gluten-free steak and chips. I had mine with the garlic butter. It was very nice. As you'd expect, the meat was cooked to perfection and their fries were actually very good as well. Before I had arrived, when I was looking on the website, I noticed they had a gluten-free cheesecake stand from a company who are based in London in Soho. I am partial to a cheesecake. I can't get them as often as I used to because they're not generally gluten-free unless they are a Basque cheesecake, which has no biscuit. So I can generally do them, and these happen to be those type. So despite having quite a large steak and fries meal, I then dragged Linda over to the cheesecake stand so I could have my dessert. It did not disappoint. It was lovely. I don't think I'd ever actually done this before going to a music festival, but they did say on the tickets that you could bring camping chairs and you could use them in allocated areas. Obviously, these allocated areas were quite away from the stages, but that is perfectly fine. Didn't mind that at all. So we thought at this point we'd best go and see some music and try out the view from where we could sit in our camping chairs. So that is exactly what we did. We went and found a spot near the main stage. The first act on were the Magic Numbers. They were fantastic. I thought they were really good. Obviously, they did their biggest hits, which went down great, but overall, I thought they sounded fantastic. And the original headliner for Saturday was meant to be Neil Young, but he had to pull out. So they did do a cover version of a Neil Young song, which obviously pleased all the Neil Young fans in the crowd. They also had an issue where about 3/4 of the way through their set, their organ stopped working and they couldn't get it going again. But fair play, they continued very professionally and you wouldn't really have known the difference. They covered for it perfectly. So that was a good start to things musically. They were followed on stage by an American female country singer who, I'll be honest, I had not heard of, called Sierra Farrell. I thought she was really good, had a classic country sound, a very good band around her, and some very catchy songs as well. So I enjoyed watching her. Once she had finished her set, there was somebody playing in the big top stage who I wanted to see. It was Elvis Costello. He had put together a band of similar aged musicians and I wanted to go and see them. A lot of the gigs he has been doing recently, he's been playing quite a bit of jazz and maybe more experimental music. I was hoping that may not be the case at this performance, and I wasn't disappointed. He was performing all his big hits, and he and that band were sounding fantastic. He is very good when he is chatting to the crowd, has lots of stories, and is entertaining and funny. His guitar playing is sensational and his voice was sounding great as well, and I just enjoyed listening to many of his big hits. In fact, during one of them he did actually seg it into 2 separate Elvis Presley songs, which I did really enjoy, being a big Elvis fan. Thoroughly enjoyed his set, as did everybody else who was there watching it with me. At this point, Linda and I decided to get a drink and head to an undercover bar area. Linda was driving, but we both agreed to keep it fair that neither of us would drink anything alcoholic. We decided we would get some non-alcoholic cider, which was advertised at all their bars. I visited all 4 of the bars on site and none of them had any left. Therefore, at that point, we did not actually fancy another soft drink or some more water. So we both agreed that we would have 1 can of apple cider, which we enjoyed very slowly whilst listening to Jack Savaretti on the main stage. That was obviously our one and only alcoholic drink of the day. Jack, as ever, sounded fantastic. He's got a great voice and a lot of very, very good songs. The day, as you'd imagine, went quite quickly. Weather-wise, it was just at the end of one of the heat waves and the day had cooled down slightly. It wasn't as hot as the previous couple of days, which I think was a good thing. If you sat outside all day watching music, you try to stay hydrated, but it is sometimes difficult to consume as much water as you need to. After another walk around the site. Time was starting to tick on, so we thought we'd better get ourselves a decent place around the main stage, ready for the rest of the musical performances. We managed to do that. As I said, the camping chair area was not that close to the stage, but it was all set out well that you could still have a decent view of proceedings, and obviously they had big screens as well. Plus the sound was fantastic where we decided to sit. The next act we saw were Skunk and Nancy. They were brilliant. Skin is a fantastic front woman. She's got a great voice, very engaging and passionate. I had forgotten how rocky that Skunk and Nancy are. Their two biggest hits, especially Weak, are probably the less rocky of all of their songs. They are quite hard rock, a lot of their numbers, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed their set. However, just before it ended, I left Linda and nipped over back to the big top stage because I wanted to see the country singer Kip Moore and some of his set. I was aware of him, I like his stuff, but I'd never actually seen him before. I was really glad I went across to have a look at him. I thought him and his band sounded amazing live, so talented, some great country music, just had the whole of the tent rocking. Really pleased I got to see him in action. I would definitely go and see one of his concerts. Then I thought I'd better get myself some more food before our headline act. I found a fully gluten-free chicken nugget stand. Now I know that doesn't sound much, but I rarely get to have chicken nuggets because you can rarely find them gluten-free, especially when you're out and about. So I was quite pleased that I managed to find some, and they offered two sizes, a standard or a large. I thought I would treat myself, so I had the large. Then I went back to meet Linda and retake my seat in the camping chair, ready for the final act of the night, which was Alanis Morissette. I, like pretty much everyone else in the country, bought her Jagged Little Pill album that had so many fantastic songs on it. Fair play to Alanis. She did the classic festival set, and I believe what all bands and artists should do in this situation. She just played all her big hits with her band. She and them sounded great, and it was just like she used to sing them back when that album was first released. She dotted them through the set very nicely. She was on for about an hour and 20 minutes, but it went really quickly. She did put on quite an energetic stage show. She was great, and that closed the day. So obviously at that point it was time for us to pack up and head back towards the car park. There were a lot of people on day tickets like us, so as you can imagine, when we found our car, which we did very quickly because, as I said earlier, we made a special note of what zone we were parked in, it did still take us a while to get out of the car park, although not too bad. When a friend and I went to see Robbie Williams at Nebworth, we did not get out of the public car park there until about 5 a.m. It took hours. We managed to get out of the car park at State Fair in Chelmsford in about half an hour, which was pretty reasonable, so we weren't home too late. It was a great day out. I believe they are doing the festival there again next year, and I would be up for going. I think I really enjoyed it. I do spend a lot of time in London, more often than not in and around central London, doing various things. We went up to the capital last Saturday afternoon to meet some friends of ours. They were off to see Harry Styles at Wembley Stadium, so we decided to meet them in a pub in Kentish Town we found a couple of years ago called the Lion and the Unicorn. It is off the main road. It's kind of hidden away in a housing estate on a corner. It has a fenced-in little beer garden in the front and another beer garden out the back, plus benches down the side. So there's plenty of places to sit outside. It's glorious in the sunshine. The staff in there are really friendly. It does really good food, and they do have gluten-free beer there. So I do really like it. In the end, we spent about 4 hours there on Saturday afternoon just chatting and talking and enjoying a few drinks. It was really nice. Then after that, our friends went off to Wembley to enjoy their concert, and we went somewhere that Linda had spotted on social media in the week. Battersea Power Station, which of course has been regenerated over the last 10 years or so. The power station is gone. There's shops, apartments and lots of other entertainment around that area. We had not been out there since all of that had been done. And this year, to celebrate Wimbledon, they had their kind of own pop-up celebrating it with deck chairs set out in front of a big screen with the tennis on. There was a Pim's bus, chance to buy strawberries and cream, everything to give you that Wimbledon experience without actually being at the Wimbledon Championships. So we thought we'd go along and take a look at that. So that's exactly what we did. I had not been anywhere near the power station since I think I was probably a child. It still does look spectacular because they've still kept those big famous chimneys, but apart from that, everything in that area has very much changed. The flats and apartments there are very, very expensive. There are so many shops, restaurants and bars in the area. We did go to the Wimbledon experience. Unfortunately, as we arrived there so late in the day, there was no chance of us getting any of the deck chairs. I imagine they used to go quite quickly and people would sit there all day watching the tennis, which is perfectly fair. We did find that they have a pop-up bar on a jetty area right next to the canal there. So we went there for a drink. I had something I don't think I've ever had before, a frosé, they called it. So basically a frozen slushy glass of rosé wine, which was actually all right. I preferred the slushy version to generally having just a glass of rosé wine. So that was good, and it was a gloriously hot sunny day, so it's always nice to be having a drink by the canal. After that, we did go and have a look at the restaurants nearby to see if any of those could accommodate us, but we hadn't booked. It was very busy in the area, so we would have had to have waited for probably up to an hour to get a table. Therefore, we decided, as it was a nice night and there was tennis on the big screen, we went to Marks and Spencer's and got ourselves a picnic. Basically, they do have a good selection of gluten-free snacks in there, so I managed to find plenty that I could eat. So we did that. Also may have got ourselves a small glass of wine each. We found a spot on the grass, sat down and had our food outside while watching the end of the day's tennis, which was a fun experience. Then once we'd eaten and it was starting to get dark, we decided to head home. On the way home, we made a last-minute decision to do something the next day that we've been meaning to do for a very long time. Linda is a ZSL member. She pays an annual fee, which does give her free visits to London Zoo and Whipsonade Zoo. I think we went to Whipsonade Zoo about 3 years ago, and ever since that point we'd been talking about going to London Zoo, but just never got round to it. So we made the decision on the train home to get up early and go to London Zoo the next day, the Sunday, which is exactly what we did. We were up at 7:30, dressed, grabbed some breakfast, and then in the end, Linda decided to drive to the zoo. I am not somebody who ever has or ever really wants to drive in or around central London. She, however, is perfectly fine with that, so I said we would go by car, but only if she was prepared to drive there and drive us back, which she was. Fortunately, it didn't actually take us that long to get there. The traffic was fine on a Sunday morning, the time we went, and it only took us about 45 minutes. We got into the zoo's car park, got parked up, and were in the queue ready for when the zoo opened at 10 a.m. I think the last time I went to London Zoo was possibly about 10 years ago with my sister. The previous time would have been when I did something at school during activities week called Zoo Quest, where basically I spent 5 days getting on a coach every morning to go to a different zoo or safari park around the UK. And I'll be honest, it was a week I really enjoyed. I'm no David Attenborough, but I do enjoy looking at animals. So once we got into the zoo, the first mission I had was to locate somewhere to go to the toilet. I had a map of the place, but as it turns out, my map reading is terrible. It took me about 3 attempts to work out where the toilets were, and I was basically standing in front of them anyway. With that out the way, I handed the map to Linda and let her negotiate us around the zoo. There have clearly been lots of changes since the last time I had been there. Several of the animals I remember are no longer there, but there are lots of new animals and lots of new enclosures. We tried to see as much of the zoo as we could. My favourites are probably the tigers, the lions and the gorillas. The lions and tigers were just lying around. The gorillas did do a bit of strolling, and they've got some babies who are being carried around on their mothers' backs, which was quite good to see. There was meerkats, and I was quite proud of myself because while I was standing there, I managed not to do my impression of the meerkat from those insurance adverts. You don't know how hard that was for me not to do it. There are a couple of the enclosures where you can walk amongst monkeys with them wandering around by you. Unfortunately, it was such a hot day in both of those enclosures. They were all inside in the air-conditioned building part of their enclosure. Really quite hard to blame them, if I'm honest. We did manage to see the pygmy hippo who was bathing in his inside hot tub, which I guess was actually a freezing cold tub. The butterfly enclosure is quite fun in that it is absolutely rammed with butterflies. So they are just flying around your head, over your head, sometimes landing on people's hats. And the colours of all of them are quite spectacular. We saw the giant Galapagos tortoises, and they are huge. I know they're big, I've seen them on the TV, but when you actually see them up close in person, you appreciate how huge these things actually are. One of my favourite animals, I think, as well, is still the giraffe. It looks so regal, relaxed and important with its huge, great neck. They were in with the zebras and the ostriches, which I always think is an interesting combination. Because we decided to go quite last minute, I didn't quite have time to get together a packed lunch to take in going to the zoo tradition. I did think I would see what the zoo was like for gluten-free food. It wasn't fantastic for main meals, but to be fair to them, on their website they do say that and suggest celiacs like me bring their own food. There is snacks you can have. There was gluten-free crisps, popcorn and other snacks like that. Some of the ice creams are gluten-free, so I did treat myself to a Magnum in the afternoon, which is quite rare. I don't often have one, but I think if you're at the zoo on a sunny day, you are very much allowed to have an ice cream. It took us round about 4 hours or so to go around the whole zoo. We saw every single section apart from one little bit, which was where the spiders were housed. Linda, not a fan of spiders, and when we went to walk into the section, they don't only have them behind glass cases. We could actually see in the middle of the walkway bit spiders and big webs, and that kind of put her off and she didn't fancy doing it. Between me and you, I wasn't too disappointed when she said that. I was perfectly fine with that. With her membership, she can go to the zoo as many times as she likes during the year, so we'll have to try and get back again, maybe in the autumn when it's a bit cooler, because that might mean a lot of the animals that were hiding indoors might be prepared to come out. So we might see a few more that we didn't. That's half the fun of the zoo to a degree, isn't it? Trying to spot all the animals. It would be no fun if they were easy to spot and you could see all of them straight away. That's how I'm viewing it anyway. It was a fun day out, and we were back home by about 4 o'clock, enough time to even get ourselves sorted to go out for an evening meal to celebrate all the steps we had done. As a result, I did have another cheesecake for dessert because, well, I thought I'd earned it with all the walking. It took me quite a while to get interested and excited about the World Cup this year. Obviously, I was always going to watch all of England's games, but the other games on the whole, I was just watching if I was around. I wasn't making a special effort to watch them. Now we are at the stage of the competition I am trying to watch all the remaining games. I did watch the game in the middle of the night, the England against Mexico game. The way I did it was I went to bed earlier than I would have. Then I set an alarm about 15 minutes from when the game was due to kick off. At that point, I found it had been delayed for an hour, so I went back to sleep for another hour, setting another alarm. Then I got up and watched the game, and then as soon as the game was over and England had miraculously won, I then went back to bed. And it worked a treat. I got to enjoy the game and was not too tired the next day. It was a game that had everything. What a roller coaster, but well done to the team. The next game is tonight, where we face Norway in the quarterfinals. It could go either way. I really hope we can get at least to the semi-finals, because once you get to that game, who knows what could happen. We could get to a World Cup final, which would be amazing. Yes, I am always optimistic, but you never know. Next time we speak, we could be men's world football champions. You never know. And Harry Kane will definitely get that knighthood I think he already deserves. That is all for now. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves and each other. I will speak to you again soon. But for now, bye-bye.